going on, folks? I'm here at Tool Dynaworks, and I have been in this room for the majority of the day now and spent most of it working on our new 2024 MT09. As you can see here, we have the full Akra installed, and right now the baffle is out, but we'll get to whether or not that actually matters here in just a second. And just to recap for anybody that didn't see the very first video when we were talking about the stock exhaust system, this thing started out making like 107 horsepower, kind of fell off on the top because of some throttle limiters and some crappy ignition timing. We resolved all that with the stock exhaust, picked up 4 or 5 horse everywhere and like 7 horse out at the top end, and I'll show you what that graph looks like here in just a second for, again, those of you that didn't see the last video. And there she is, Blue Lion, run 10 was our nice hot baseline after we broke in the bike on the dyno, 107 horse, 62 foot-pounds of torque, and 111.75 and 65 foot-pounds of torque once we got that properly dialed in. Now, since then, we went ahead and threw on the Akra, and I made no fuel changes to the stock mapping whatsoever when we put this on. It did already have our custom throttle-by-wire and ignition timing mapping in place, but the AFR chart you're going to see at the bottom is legit. And it was spicy lean pretty much the entire way across the board. And without proper mapping, actually made less power than it would have if it was just stock and properly tuned, because it was not happy. But once we got the fuel mapping dialed in, it made pretty significant gains. 113.5 horsepower, still about 65 foot-pounds of torque, but that's not a lot more than stock. Now, at that point, we still have the baffle in the muffler, because that's the way the Akra comes, and that baffle's a bastard to get out, by the way, when it's hot. So we left it in there first and then pulled it out second, just to see if there's any difference. And there wasn't. So there you can see run 16, which is what I just showed you, in the run 3 after a couple passes of pulling the baffle out, and pretty much nothing changed. I mean, you're talking like hundredths of a horsepower. So when I saw that, I went, well, shit, that's not really what the last bike made when it was properly tuned. So we decided to just go ahead and install our intakes that we had ordered anyway, and see if that helped. So after we were done dialing in the mapping for the Akra, the baffle in and the baffle out, we went ahead and decided to throw in our DNA air filters that we ordered for the prior generation, and I had a 70% hope that they were going to fit because the intake, the entire airbox actually, is a different part number, even the filter, than the old generation, but in the parts diagram, just on, you know, a CAD drawing essentially, they looked similar, but they're not. This newer airbox is actually smaller. And the old DNA filter, both for the drop-in and for the lid replacement, just doesn't work. In fact, if we take a look at the Stage 2 kit and we go ahead and try to line it up to where it used to fit, I mean, it's significantly smaller than the old airbox, which kind of explains why I didn't get quite as much power out of the full Akra as I was expecting. It appears that this newer intake is just more of a restriction. But on the stock filter, there was one of the traditional sort of metal grates, the backfire screens on there. They're almost never a restriction, so we went ahead and removed it. There was also a little tiny air dam looking thing on here that I didn't get a chance to take a video of before Derek cut it off, hence the little particulate we're going to have to blow out of there. But we'll see if that makes any difference. I doubt it will, but we already had it apart, so we'll try it. And sadly, just yanking off the backfire screen and the air dam off the stock filter also did pretty much nothing. Again, we're talking about 1/10 of a horsepower. The torque actually is within 1/100th the same. You couldn't get closer than that if you tried. But yeah, it made 1/10 of a horsepower more, which is honestly just run-to-run variance and not even something worth considering doing. Okay, so what does all that mean? Because a lot of that, I realized, just sounded like some doom and gloom for the new 2024 model. It's not. Take a look at the stock bike versus a full exhaust and the ECU flash that we just created for this setup and see the gains for yourself. It's a pretty darn significant jump. You know, you're talking about 6 to 7 horsepower pretty much everywhere in the upper third of the RPM range, about 10 horsepower there at 10,300 RPMs, and about 3 or 4 foot-pounds of torque no matter where you look. The other thing that it means, and very definitively kind of puts a nail in the coffin of the idea from other folks out there, that you can somehow carry over the fuel mapping that you've built for the prior generation bike into this one. Because the airbox isn't even close to the same. It's several cubic inches smaller than the prior generation setup. So, next up, we're gonna go in and hack the thing up, because there has to be some more just oomph out of this thing through modifying that intake. I've got a couple ideas on how I'm gonna go about doing it, but we'll save that for the next video, and you guys can see what we come up with. We also have several more exhaust systems on the way for this bike, and a couple that we're actually testing fitment for some exhaust manufacturers, because they're not really 100% certain if they're going to fit on the new bike, which is why a lot of manufacturers out there don't list the 2024 models yet, and if you ask them, they just kind of go, maybe? So obviously we'll figure all that out, we'll test those for you as well, and that will all be in coming videos in the next few weeks. Now, as always, if you have any questions whatsoever about getting your new 2024 MT09 properly dialed in, do not hesitate to send us an email. Our email is support@tooldynaworks.com, and we are always happy to help answer any of your questions. Our ECU flash and custom mapping for these bikes is on sale on our website for $349.99, and it's all at twowheeldynaworks.com.